What's up, guys? This is Manoj Putani. I welcome you all on behalf of the Edupedia world. So, guys, it's a wonderful day outside. Proper sunlight is coming directly on my face, and I'm sure that you guys are enjoying your day to the fullest, having a great life in your respective lives currently. So, with that kind of hope and belief, I'll just start out my today's presentation, and that will be on dividend decision. This is the fifth presentation wherein I'll be discussing with you the remaining two of the models. In this particular presentation, we'll be covering one of them, that is dividend discount model. So I just hope and believe that you guys are revising your topics time and again, and do need to ensure that, guys, because that's the only thing which is going to ensure that you don't flunk in your CA final examination. You need to take care of these things. These small actions are the actual things which make and impact your life in a bigger way. So do ensure that thing for sure. Perfect, guys. With that kind of hope and belief in you, and certainly that you guys are honoring your word of revision time and again, we'll just kickstart our presentation for the day with the first topic, and that is before saying that, definitely I would like to say something about these things, that by now we have already covered the theories relating to traditional position. That was from Graham and Dodd, Voltaire approach, Gordon growth model, Modigliani Miller hypothesis is still pending to be done, Lintner model that has already been covered, radical approach has already been covered, and in this presentation I'll be covering with you guys dividend discount model. In my next presentation I'll be discussing with you guys Modigliani and Miller hypothesis. So once all these approaches are covered, you'll be like having a bang on kind of approach as far as dividend decision making is concerned. So let's begin our presentation with dividend discount model. So guys, what can you think about this model? By its name, what does it suggest? A dividend, discount, and model. The complete name is being divided into three segments, that is dividend, discount, and model. So the name itself is suggesting you something relating to the valuation of a particular share of any of the company. I can get the value of a share directly on the basis of its two aspects. One is dividend and another one is discounting. Is that possible for me, that I be able to understand the valuation of any of the company with the help of dividend discounting? Absolutely it is. Indeed it is. So guys, dividend discount model is basically that one model, financial model, that values shares at a discounted value of its future dividend payments. This model basically provides a means of developing an explicit kind of expected return for the market. And since the shares are valued on the actual cash flows which are being received by the investors, or I should better say the shareholders for the company, it is a kind of theoretically correct valuation model. Why? Because under this particular model, the price of the share will be traded is actually calculated on the basis of its net present value of all the expected future dividend payments, on the basis of its dividend being discounted by an appropriate risk adjusted rate. So this dividend discount model price is basically the kind of intrinsic value of that stock. Supposedly, if a company doesn't pay any of the dividend, then in that case the expected future cash flow will be the only its sale price. Why? Because it doesn't pay any of the dividends. Similarly, that security with a greater risk must potentially pay a very greater kind of return so as to attract the investors in order to make sure that their security gets bought. And the rate of return, which is called the required rate of return, or I should better say the kind of expectation the investors are having from that company, that capitalization rate. It is basically the rate of return which is required by the investors to compensate for that particular risk of owning that security. And this capitalization rate can be used to price a stock as a sum of its present value of its future cash flows in the very similar manner that the investment interest rates are used to price bonds in terms of its cash flow. Remember, we did discuss about this thing in my bond valuation segment, wherein I told you about if in case I need to value my pricing of a particular bond, all I need to take up is the bond prices. One. Second, what is the interest rate that I'll be getting as far as the bonds are concerned? And by discounting the number of the payment of interest that I'll be getting in the form of the payments, bond valuation payment, if I'll be like discounting the same with my required rate of return, I'll get to know the valuation of that bond, and that will be the intrinsic value. On the similar lines, this is called dividend discount model, and it works exactly on the same line. The only difference between the two is there I was talking about bond valuation, the value of a bond. Here I'm talking about valuation of a share. That's the sole difference between the two. So accordingly, the dividend discount model basically prices a security, a stock, by the sum of its future cash flows, which are being discounted by the required rate of return that an investor usually demands for the risk of owning that security, or I should better call it stock. So all those future cash flows basically include dividends plus the sale price of that stock when it will be sold. So this DDM, if I'll talk about dividend discount model price, that will be the intrinsic value of the stock. And simply, if the stock pays no dividend, definitely the expected future cash flow for that particular security will be the sale price. That's it. So apart from that, it's a very simple, very straightforward kind of a concept, and the intrinsic value will be like simply the sum of all the present value of all the future cash flows that you'll be getting. So that's what dividend discount model actually tells you out. So it's a very basic and a very simple kind of model. It needs to be understood by its concept. You don't need to ratify or any of the concept relating to the same. Just understand it and definitely you'll be able to sail through. So that was my brief for dividend discount model. Now let's stick to our black and white. So dividend discount model is a financial model that values shares at the discounted value of the future dividend payments. Dividend discount model is theoretically a very correct kind of a valuation model since the shares are valued on the actual cash flows which are being received by the investors. Under DDM, the price at which a share will be traded is calculated by the NPV of all the expected future dividend payment discounted by an appropriate risk adjusted rate. And what does this appropriate risk adjusted rate means? It's simply the expectation of the shareholders, the expectation of the investors. In our terms, we usually call it simply the capitalization rate. DDM price is actually the intrinsic value of the stock. By intrinsic value, I simply mean the true worth of that stock. Future cash flows include dividends as well as the sale price of the stock when it is sold. Obviously, if I'll talk about what you as an investor or you as a shareholder are getting from your company in which you have invested, simply you are getting the dividend, and if in case you'll be like thinking about or planning to sell off that particular share, then you'll be getting the sale price on that stock. So what kind of cash flow did you generate? You simply generated two of the things, one dividend and another one the capital gain while you sell off your security at the selling price. So these are the only two future cash flows which are being associated with that. If the stock pays no dividend, then in that case the expected future cash flow will simply be just the selling price of that particular stock. So here it is, the concept, the major concept. It was all the briefing about the concept, which because I wanted to provide you some certain kind of foundation before you are actually engrossed in the topic. So intrinsic value is equivalent to the sum of present value of all the future cash flows. And remember guys, this concept, this topic, that is dividend discount model, is exactly on the same lines as far as the valuation of a bond is concerned. We just briefed you up in one of my presentation. If in case you need to scroll out back to that, definitely you can go ahead. That's presentation which is available on the same platform, that is Edipedia World. One of my playlists is having the same video. So that's exactly on the same lines. The only difference between the two is there I was talking about the valuation of a bond, and here I am talking about the valuation of a particular share with the help of dividend discount model. So intrinsic value is equal to the sum of present value of the future cash flows. Intrinsic value is equal to the sum of present value of dividends plus the present value of stock sale price. If I'll have to like bifurcate it between the two, then one is dividend, another one is stock sale price. And here's the concept. So the stock intrinsic value will be equal to D1. By D1, I simply mean the dividend which is expected to be paid in next year. That is the expected dividend which I'll be getting. So that's D1 divided by 1 plus K. By K, I simply mean my expectation as an investor. What do I expect the company to pay me as some kind of cost? So that is my expectation from the company. So that is my capitalization rate. 1 plus K whole to the power 1. Why? Because that's at the end of year 1. Plus D2 again. So the expected dividend which I'll be getting in year 2, that is D2 divided by 1 plus K, again my expectation, to the power 2. Why? Because it's second year now. So that will be into 2. Plus this will go on, go on, go on. At the last, I'll be getting DN, that is my final dividend that I'll be getting in the last year, whole divided by 1 plus K to the power N. Why? Because I am not so much sure about my infinity, wherein I'll be like selling my particular stock. And finally, plus the P. P is basically the selling price that I'll be getting once I'll be willing to sell off my share, whole divided by 1 plus K to the power N. Why? Because that's the number of years until the stock is sold. So simple formula, simple kind of concept. You just need to move ahead and dividend discount model is done. So guys, that was all about dividend discount model. I'm sure that you guys got the entire clarity as to how it is to be taken care of. Models which are basically being used in dividend discount model. Herein I'll be talking about that. So dividend discount model is basically having 3 different types of model. There are numerous kind of companies in the world. And I'm sure that you are aware of many of such companies wherein you can't compare Tata with Paytm. Obviously you can't. And on the same lines, you can't compare Paytm with Rivigo. Why? Because all these 3 companies are different in totality with each other. One is just a startup. Another one is a growing kind of startup. And the third one is an established kind of a company. So each company is having different set of policies as far as the dividend issues or dividend decisions are basically concerned. So primarily and majorly, if I'll talk about, there are 3 different models which are being used in dividend discount model. First one, zero discount model. Second one, the constant growth model. Zero growth model, then constant growth model, and finally the variable growth model. And I'm sure that you guys are very much smart enough. So by the name itself, you can guess the idea. What does this zero growth model mean? So there are companies which are willing to pay dividend. However, they don't provide any other growth on that dividend. They just provide you, okay, I'll be like providing you as my shareholder 2 rupees per share in year 1, in year 2, year 3, year 4, and so on. Just 2 rupees each year without any of the growth. That is called zero growth model. And then there are certain companies which do believe that we need to increase the stake for my shareholder in my company by paying him a better dividends. In the sense, I need more of the shareholders to get attracted by my company's policies. Then in order to ensure that, I'll have to provide something back to my investors or shareholders so that they remain in my company for long, and they don't find any other company to just switch in. So in order to ensure that, there are many companies that provide certain constant growth on their respective dividend amounts each year, 10%, 12%, 15%, and so on. So that is basically the constant one, wherein you just provide a particular constant growth. Okay, I'll be providing 10% growth in my dividend each year. 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%, and so on. So that is constant growth model. And finally, that comes in the variable growth model. Obviously, uh, in such a competitive arena and cutthroat competition that we are staying in, even the companies are aware of this idea that in order to attract a certain amount of shareholders or investors in your company, you'll have to provide them something lucrative enough to ensure that they stick to your company. So, what's the best deal other than providing them the dividends on a variable growth basis? Okay, dude, you have invested in our company on a certain set of time wherein we required capital so much. So you have been a blessing in disguise for us. We'll provide you the growth at 10% first year, second year 12%, third year 15%, then 18%. So that is called variable growth model. That is the last one. So these are the basic models. I just provide you the brief about all these three models. Let's understand them each one by one so that you guys can get the best of the clarity. Zero growth rate dividend discount model. Since the zero growth model assumes that the dividends always stay the same, the stock price would be equal to the annual dividends divided by the required rate of return. The stock's intrinsic value in that case will be equal to the annual dividends divided by the required rate of return. Simple. D1 divided by KE. Simple. That's a very simple kind of thing. A stock based on a zero growth model can still change the price if the capitalization rate changes. And when will the same be changed? Obviously, if in case there are some certain kind of risks changes which are actually going on. And if in case it will perceive some of the risk changes. Supposedly, you started investing in a company during that particular moment. Your expectation as a shareholder was, okay, I'll be like happy if in case I get a required rate of return as 10%. And supposedly, after some certain point of time, you feel like now your required rate of return is changing from the one at which you initially started off. Then definitely in that case, the stock's price is going to be get affected with the same thing. Why? Because now your required rate of return is no more the same as to when you started. So that is going to affect the intrinsic value of that particular stock. Why? Because only in this case, two components are actually affecting. One, dividend, another one is required rate of return. Any of the one, if change, definitely is going to affect the stock's intrinsic value. For example, if a share pays a dividend of rupees 1.80 per year and the required rate of return for the stock is 8%, then its intrinsic value is none other than simply 1.80 divided by 0.08. So the value for that particular stock will be equal to rupees 22.50. So it's a very basic and a very simple model that is called zero growth model. I hope you got the complete clarity relating to the same. Now let's move to our next one, and that is constant growth rate dividend discount model. So guys, in case of this constant growth rate dividend discount model, this is basically like popularized by again the Gordon growth model itself. So which was being popularized by Myron J. Gordon. We have read about this particular model in my last presentations. So this particular thing assumes that the investment as far as the dividends are concerned will grow at a specific kind of percentage each year, as I briefed you, and which is usually denoted as G. G means growth, and the capitalization rate is denoted by K, that is K, which means the same thing. So constant growth rate DDM concept will be, in such a case, intrinsic value will be equal to the expected dividend that you will be receiving in the next year, D1, divided by K minus G. By K, I again means capitalization rate. By G, it's dividend growth rate. So as far as the constant growth model being differentiated with zero growth model, these two things are basically being concerned. So there is just a single difference between the two. There it was D1 divided by K. Here it's D1 divided by K minus G. Why? Because growth is being involved in this case. So that's the sole difference between the two things. Constant growth model is often used to value stocks of mature companies that have increased the dividend steadily over the years. Let's suppose there is a simple kind of a phenomenon which is being used by one company. Currently, Paytm is growing on, and Paytm is not having its IPO in the market. I know it very well. But if in case tomorrow it starts growing like anything and it releases or issues its IPO in the market, what do you think? What's the kind of a company policy as far as dividend will be concerned? Is this particular company going to provide you the dividend? I don't think so. Why? Because that's a very simple thing which is being concerned with this company. This is a growing startup and they require funds. They want people to stick to their company and provide them funds. So they just don't want to release the payment in the form of dividend. Why? Because they need funds to come to their place. So they'll believe in one concept, don't pay dividend, but provide better growth to its shareholders as far as the capital gains are concerned. So that won't be the thing which will be applied to Paytm. But if I'll talk about TCS, Infosys, companies like this, which have already been categorized into the companies being termed as mature companies, they've already earned huge amount of profits, huge chunk of money. So what kind of principle or dividend policy will they be like finding best for their company? Obviously, constant growth rate or the variable growth rate. Why? Because they want their shareholders to get benefit of increased dividend payments each year, and that will be increased slowly over the years. So, for those kind of companies, constant growth rate is the best kind of model. I hope you got the complete clarity as to what constant growth model is concerned and for which of the companies it's best to be used. Next and the last one will come in as before moving, perfect. Again, so I have like illustrated an example over here which is relating to constant growth model. If a stock pays a rupees 4 dividend in the current year and the dividend has been growing 6% annually, then what will be the price of the stock next year? Assuming a required rate of return of 12%. Solution for the same. But before going into solution, it's simply required to be done by you as my student first. So if 4 rupees is being paid as a dividend for current year and it is likely to grow 6% annually, so what will be my dividend for next year? Think. Perfect. 4 into 1.06. Simple. So that will be my dividend for next year. And what this particular question is asking, what will be the price of the stock next year? Assuming that the required rate of return is 12%. So what do I need to do? I simply need to divide 4 point something 4 into 1.06 divided by 1 plus 1 2. That is my required rate of return. And then you'll be getting the price of the stock in a very simple manner. So next year's price will be 4 into 1.06 divided by 12%. That is my required rate of return. And I'll be deducting my growth rate out of the same. That is 6%. So that will be 4.24 divided by 0.06 and the stock price will be 70.67. And this is the next year's stock price. But if I'll have to compare the same with the current one, so my current stock price, if I'll take into account my current status, so that will be 4 divided by 0.06. And that will be rupees 66.67. You must be thinking about the fact as to how the 0.06 came in. So that is 12% minus 6%. That is my KE minus growth. So in that case, my growth rate for the stock price will be equal to 70.67. That is my expected stock price for next year divided by current year stock price, that is 66.67. So that is exactly 1.06, which is my dividend growth rate. So here, hence, it is being proved that it's nothing which is being exactly affecting a particular stock's price for the next year other than its growth rate. So it's just the dividend's growth rate which is actually impacting and affecting the price to rise for the next year. So this is, guys, the constant dividend growth rate model. Uh, I guess you got a complete clarity as to what this model sums up. So let's move to our next one, and that is variable growth rate model, VDM. So again, as I just briefed you up, it's exactly on the similar lines. It will be a multi-stage growth model which takes many of the forms. Most common form is the one that assumes usually three different rates of growth. One at the initial high rate of growth. Again, I'll take up example of Paytm. If Paytm is like growing like anything during this moment of time due to demonetization or any other effect which has been with which our current scenario, political or economic, is being concerned. So that's solely due to this all these things, and which is directly impacting it to be taking the position of the initial higher rate of growth currently. Slowly, it will take transition into slower growth. And finally, lastly, there will be a sustainable, steady rate of growth will happen sooner or later. So that will take into the place of the big giants like Infosys, TCS, Reliance. So these are the companies which have like reached to their peak, and now they are just sustainably growing themselves. They are not growing at a very high pace or a very slower angles. So they are like just constantly growing, these kind of companies. So variable growth rate model usually assumes these three different rates of growth, which is being mentioned over there. So even the capitalization rate or the required rate of return may be varied if in case there are some of the changes which are being projected. So that will depend upon the question. If in case question does ask you that yes, capitalization rate needs to be changed, accordingly you'll have to settle in that question. So guys, this was variable growth rate model. I hope you got the complete clarity as to what dividend discount model does actually mean, and for which of the companies it's best to provide the dividends at a higher rates, and for which of the companies it's always better to pay normal dividends, and the kind of companies which do not require to pay dividend at all. So I just briefed you about all these things which are actually affecting the political, corporate, and every scenario of each of the corporate companies which are being concerned and are available in our nation. So with this, I'll be concluding with a dose of motivation, and that will be somebody was once a nobody who wanted to, and he did. So this quote was being mentioned by John Borrox, and obviously, guys, each and every person, if you'll have to take into account from the stories, that is rags to riches, be it Shah Rukh Khan, be it Dhirubhai Ambani, be it Mandela, Nelson Mandela, the former president of South Africa, be it Mahatma Gandhi, our father of the nation. So all these individuals, they rose from bottom to the top, and there would have been many instances wherein the world would have told to them that yes, you can't do it, just stop. Had it been the case, if they would have stopped, would it have been like possible for we guys to know who Shah Rukh Khan is, who Mahatma Gandhi is, who Nelson Mandela is, or who Dhirubhai Ambani is? Definitely not, guys. So they were the persons who actually thought that yes, they are going to make it big, and they made it big. So a somebody was once a nobody who wanted to, and finally they did. You'll have to straight up your ambitions, your aspirations straight higher to the goal. And if in case that yes, you believe it, you'll be able to achieve them. Perfect, guys. With that kind of thing, I'll just say good luck to you. Thank you on behalf of Wikipedia World. Keep interacting via questions, queries. We'll love to hear your responses. If in case you come up with any of the queries, just write down on the YouTube comment boxes. We'll love to reply and provide you our respective responses. Stay connected. That will actually help us in understanding your needs way better. Love you guys. Good luck. God bless you all. See you in the next presentation.